Alright, so in this video, we'll be breaking down how ngram models make their predictions based on probabilities. In the first two videos, I explained how language models predict next word, how they are not humans and just predict next words based on some form of probabilities and on the likes. And the second video, we visualized how bigrams, trigrams, predict the next word based on the context that they have to use. So in today's episode, we'll be rounding up everything around ngram models because most of the new models that we interface with or we interact with these days are pretty much very large and they use more complex algorithms. So moving away from ngram models because there's been a lot of advancements in language modeling and all that. So in this episode, we'll be looking much around how these ngram models go about making their predictions. So given their corpus, how do they, when you ask the model for something, when you input some text, how does it determine the next word to give back to you? How does it predict the next word? Right. So we're pretty much looking at how these models do the conversion of the text into numbers and back to text, because that I explained in the earlier episode that is pretty much how these models work. So they don't reason the way humans do. They pretty much just do these conversions and make predictions. So in this video, I'll be explaining how they use probabilities, what probabilities to return the most probable word if that's correct, right? To tell you to predict the next word for you. For example, if your corpus is made up of say 20 words, and out of the 20 words you have like 7 the in the entire corpus, that means the probability that your model return back the word the is like 7 over 20 because the word the appears 7 times in the entire corpus. That means there's a probability that the probability of it being returned back is 7 over 20. Right, so that's pretty much how they go about it. I don't want to really spend so much time in this. What I've done, however, for this video was to create an app to visualize how this works. We'll see how the models break down these words, how they calculate the probabilities, and then we'll test it out again with the word prediction. So we'll pretty much type in some words and then we see how the model is going to predict the next word. We'll compare that with the probability and see that the highest probability words have a higher chance of being returned back compared to the lower probability ones. So that's pretty much how this video is going to go. Right, so sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Cool. So this app pretty much helps to, visualize how everything comes together, right? So what we've learned in episodes 1 and 2 will be pretty much displayed here. So I'm going to copy in copies of how to cook spaghetti. So I'm feeding this into my model, and I will see how different models will break these couples down for me. So the first one here is the unigram model. This model is n of 1. It doesn't factor in any previous word in context, right? So in here, we have each of the words in this corpus being broken down. So we realize here that the appears 44 times, which is like 7.35% of the whole word of the whole corpus, right? So this is how many times it appears, compared to how many words you have in your corpus. And then 2 follows closely with 24. That's 4.01%. And then we have other ones here, the hey, the and first and all that. And this is pretty much a breakdown of how to return a word back to you. So if you're using a unigram model, if you're trying to generate a word from it, the most likely word that is returned back to you is the, right? Because it doesn't use any context, right? Because that is the one that appears most in its breakdown of the whole corpus. So if we choose the bigram model, right? So I've called this bigram a whole lot in this series, but just realize it's actually bigram, right? So the bigram model breaks the corpus down this way. So you have the pasta appears 8 times in the corpus, right? So what I mean by that is when you look at the entire corpus, the pasta appears like 8 times together throughout the corpus. So if you look at the bigger model, considering each of these words, so this is how it breaks down the corpus, right? So you have all these combinations within the corpus. The pasta appears 8 times in the corpus together. The spaghetti appeared 5 times together. The water appeared 4 times together. So they appeared 4 times together and all like that. So you have spaghetti dish 3 times appearing together in the corpus, right? So that's how bigram model works. And remember, when you're using a bigram model, it uses the word before it as a context to predict the next word. So, for example, if I go in the next word prediction and I type the word the, or if any of my sentences ends with the, it's going to predict. There's a very high chance that it's going to pass that back to me because it has the most occurrences in here. And then, for example, if I type in two, there's a very high chance that the is the word that will come after it. So let's try an example before I move on to the trigram model. So we're going to text the word D as the context. Now, remember what I said about the bigram model. It uses just one word as context, and when it's making a prediction back to you, it's most likely it's going to return the pasta because that appeared together 8 times in the couples. However, if you look at the couples here, I've highlighted this word salt in the water, right? Ideally, if the model is smart enough, if it was a trigram model, it will get this prediction. It will get the water prediction perfectly because there is water here. But for a bigram model, this water is not the highest occurring bigram. I mean, if I know to, yeah, so it's not the one that occurs most after the word the in the corpus, if you get what I mean. So the bigram model will not make a reasonable prediction. It's just going to predict based on the one that occurred the most, right? So, however, it's worth pointing out that, yeah, this is just an example. For a larger corpus, you might get something better, right? So, but just to draw down the point that the bigram model uses a single word to make its prediction. So I'm just going to copy this. Or better still, I'm going to copy the entire corpus, go back to my next word prediction, paste it in here. I'm going to choose the bigram model, which is n of 2. And then I'm going to type salting the. Right. What we expect is for it to actually predict water, right? Because that is what is in the couple, and that's what makes sense. That's what we expect, right? But if I click on enter, I realize that it returns back pasta because that is the one that occurred most. However, if I change this to 3, which is a trigram model, it's gonna make the prediction because it uses these two as context, right? So if they're back in here, now that is a trigram model. And also we can look for another example here where a higher model will make a better prediction compared to. So what I want to do is let's look for U here, because I want to type a sentence like before by following these guidelines, and we expect a higher model to get the right prediction. So for example, if we try pasta, right, so if we try pasta, we have pasta 2 and we have pasta water, right? So let's check what we can do. So if I do this is a very good example. So you have pasta can, pasta 2. However, in a bigram model, pasta 2 is the most occurring one. So you expect 2 to be predicted. Let's copy this. And I'm supposed to use this in the next one prediction. So pastor, yeah, let's copy this. So for a bigram model, if I click on enter here, you would expect it to return can to you, but fortunately, it's going to return 2 because, in the analysis, the bigram model breaks them into 2. So the one that occurred most was pasta 2. But if I choose a higher model, say trigram model does the same because if we go back to the analysis, you realize that pasta 2 maybe occurred more, than one time. But if we go to a higher model that uses like a 4-gram model, this one uses this combination of words to make its prediction, we have a higher chance of getting a better prediction. Right. So this is pretty much how these kind of models make predictions, right? So they pretty much they analyze the words in the corpus. They give it percentages based on the probability number of times they occurred relative to the entire corpus. And then these are kind of, ordered. And when the model looks at your phrase, it pretty much just uses the context. For example, for a bigram, uses one word context to make its next prediction. and that goes back to his analysis of the word. So same thing with the other higher models. So that's why sometimes when you have a model that uses more context, it gives you more, that kind of model gives you a better prediction compared to a model, an Ingram model that uses lower number of context to make prediction. I hope this breakdown was good enough. There are very much more technical breakdown to this and exploring and all that, but I thought I would make this as simple and as broken down as possible so that you can understand how this works behind the scene, right? So, and a very good understanding of how this Ngram models work would help you to really, understand or visualize the way the very large ones work, the ones like the ChatGPT and Co. However, those ones, like I've emphasized severally, those ones use more, better algorithms like neural networks, transformers, to make sure that the models are smarter than the basic Ngram models that just predicts based on probabilities and the likes, right? So I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please give the video a like, subscribe to get more content. In this series, I still have more videos, right? In the next one, we'll be moving away from Ngram models and looking at the smarter models. And we'll sort of, in the next one, look at how these AIs transform their finite data into infinite creativity. Like, so yeah, sometimes that when you type in something, I'll ask them to do something for you. The way they respond, how creative they can be is usually very amazing and unexpected sometimes. So we'll do a deep dive into how they go about this. How do they go out of line sometimes? How do they come up with more creative things back to you, right? So I'll just see you in the next one. Bye for now. All right, so before I end the video, it's worth mentioning that I'll make some updates to this app so that you don't have to go through the stress of, having to copy and paste all over both places. I make it, persisted across your session. I mean, across both pages. And also, one thing I've added is the number of words that you have in the corpus will be displayed here as well, just so you can compare what you have to the total words in the corpus and be able to see how they all relate together. All right, so yeah, I'll also drop the link to the app in the video description, so you can have a look and play around as well for yourself, just to see how this all comes together. If you have any comments around what we can improve on or what I can add to it, please let me know in the comments section. And yes, that'll be it for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.